Item number 10, Department and Committee Reports and Non-Action Items, 10A, 2020 Budget Hearing Number 4, Original Adopted Budget, Final Direction by the BOCC. Sherry Cassidy, CFO, Financial Services.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the final direction for the original adopted budget. On October 3rd, we had the preliminary balanced budget presentation, and then on October 15th and 17th, you heard from all of the departments and offices on their critical needs, and several of the departments and offices are in attendance, so if you have any follow-up questions with them, they are available to answer any questions. This is a very short PowerPoint today because we don't have very many updates from the October 3rd. So the only real change we have is that we did get a revised revenue estimate on traffic fines from the Sheriff's Office because they've implemented the traffic unit and they are seeing an increase of $250,000 a year on that. So we did incorporate that into the budget. Other than that, everything has basically stayed the same. On our reserve strategy, there's one item to note on here because our 2019 revenues, our sales tax is coming in stronger than we thought. We thought that we were going to have the dip coming up, and it hasn't. It has stayed up. So, but since we were already above our Tabor cap, we increased the, this was $2.5 million. We've increased that to $4.5 million for the unanticipated revenues, but we also increased this number from a $3 million Tabor overage to a $5 million Tabor overage. And that's the item that would be considered for, it would go back to you as to how to take care of the $5 million overage, or when we finalize the number, and that could be potentially a November ballot that would be refunded in 2021, refunded or a ballot initiative. And also on this chart, this is where we had discussed that we would cap this at the $5 million. So the underspending that we budgeted out here in this future years has been incorporated into the roadmap. So our next steps is we have the final direction today on the budget. Over the next 3 weeks, our staff prepares all the required budget documents. These are the documents that goes to both the state and GFOA. December 10th, we will approve the original adopted budget. There's 3 resolutions that are required to be approved. It's the original adopted budget, the mill levy resolution, and the transfer resolution. The statutory deadline to have that done is December 15th, so if there's a snow day, which usually happens this time of year, we still have December 12th to come back in and do the approval.
If we have to come back on December 26th to do it, we're going to be upset.
Yes, we will be. We all will be. This is the, just as a reminder, this is all of the requests that we had, just for your reference. And then this is where we ended up with the roadmap on October 3rd. This is the sheet that you can make changes to today. And, oh, sorry, that's the updated financial roadmap there. And we've incorporated in that revenue change in the revenue line. So as you can, that's the wrong cursor. As you can see down here, we were at $37,000. We're now at $355,000. So if you wanted to appropriate that anywhere, you could do that today. And then now to the spreadsheet, and Nikki is going to control the keyboard. And the way we do this is we don't need votes today, but what I need is 3 commissioners to agree to add anything or remove anything. I can do that with head nods, or you can just say, yes, leave it in, and if I get 3 of them. So I'll watch for that. Nikki can plug it in to the spreadsheet, and we can see where we are.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Williams.
First, I want to thank you very much. I had expressed early on my concern for the employees next year because we have 27 pay periods, and I appreciate the effort to put 1.5% into allowing our department heads and elected officials for pay increases because our employees are the best. We want to keep them around. So I appreciate that very much. I haven't any thought yet on the 355,000, so I will wait and see what other suggestions there are.
I was thinking we'd do like arena-style cage fighting for the 350 grand. If people want to come down and duke it out, then, whoever wins gets it. How about that? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did bring tasers if we wanted to do the Coliseum style.
Okay, well, that works too. Can we have a vote on that before we get... No, I'm kidding.
I've been looking at this. I was hearing that there might have been some underspending, which allowed very, very little flexibility, but something. First of all, I did want to thank staff for all the great work you've done working on the budget this year. And I want to thank all the county employees for their commitment to the county and to the residents and citizens of El Paso County. Thank you for all the great things you do. So I similarly am very happy we were able to get them a little bit of an increase, as small as it is, to thank them and for their ongoing hard work that they've been doing. I receive calls from residents on numerous issues, throughout the year, but overwhelmingly it's always usually on one topic: roads. Pothole issues, grading issues, it's local county roads, and it's the one thing I think I've been very consistent on is continuing to try to get a little bit more, even if it's just a little bit, to our county roads to improve those situations. So, seeing that there is a little bit there, and even though it's not a lot of money, I do think it makes some difference to those residents who do get to benefit from some of those improvements. And so I would recommend $100,000. Again, as small as it is, it's something that I think can help in some sort of fund that is the general fund for use funds for potholes, grading, cleaning out ditches, et cetera. And I do believe there is one high-impact road safety project fund line. And if that's the appropriate list, I would recommend that $100,000 go to that.
But before we get too far down this road of talking about how we're going to allocate the rest of these dollars, I want to make sure we give opportunity to folks in the public to be able to speak on and address this budget. And maybe if they'd like to address that $350,000, I want to give that opportunity as well. So is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on the budget overall? Is there anybody that would like to speak on how they feel the allocation of this $350,000 should go? This is your opportunity. Dossie, you want to build a pickleball court out behind the building over there? So, all right, going once, going twice. All right, well, I guess we'll just then bring it up here for some deliberation and discussions. And if something comes up that, somebody in the public wants, something comes up that hadn't been addressed before and you want to comment on, I think that's appropriate as well. So just kind of try to flag us down, and I want to give everybody ample opportunity to speak on this budget. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I also support an investment in getting a little bit more money into roads. It's always been a position of mine over the last 2.5 years that we need to work our road issues as much as possible before we have the economic downturn, and then we have to choose between roads and employees. So I want to get as much of that road problem fixed as possible. I have one other request, but it's for a small amount for consideration of my fellow commissioners. We tried for a grant for the census to help market the census in rural areas to make sure that they get counted. We were unable to get that grant from state funding. That just was not successful. So I have an interest in, it's a small amount of money, $10,000 of that $355 to go towards a marketing effort coming out of the county to ensure that people in rural communities have an opportunity to be counted in the census. Outside of that, I'm interested in the other commissioners' thoughts, but I would allocate the remainder of it to road projects, actually.
Well, and I think I agree with you there, but I'd like a little bit more information first. Is there anybody else that's vying for? Are there any other needs that could potentially come out of this $355,000?
Just the other items that weren't funded on the roadmap. And if you have do you have your binders with you?
But as we're looking at the chart on the screen here, we're talking about taking stuff out of column D, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And Mr. Chair, to also answer your question, I'm not aware of any official public comments that were submitted to the budget office during the
Okay.
budget hearing process.
That's what I was getting at. Yep, Commissioner Williams.
I thought this chart was what we had funded, or this is what's not funded.
This chart is our proposed budget.
Okay.
The,
And then there was a second page
the
in the
prior,
budget of requested critical needs that we didn't fund.
the requested is the entire requested amount of which some of those were funded. But it's the, in your PowerPoint, slide 6,
Thank
the
you.
one that I just passed out this morning. And Nikki's calling up.
I'm looking for the presentation that we presented on October 17th that will show you the critical needs everything that was requested and then the disposition of it, so how it was funded or if it wasn't funded, if it's postponed to future years.
And that was this last one that I had presented on the 17th.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes.
Amy Folsom, County Administrator. Sherry, could you go back to the chart and then up to the reserves line item? And I want to be clear that in order to fund the pay increases or the potential pay increases for employees, we did take an additional amount out of reserves. So I would also proffer for the board's consideration to go ahead and replenish that for future needs.
Yes, that's correct, because we did take the reserves down to $500,000, the $546,000.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner
And
Williams.
so where we took that out of reserve, if we do have underspending, that goes back into our reserve unless the project has already been started. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And so if we were to, just throwing out something here, if we took Commissioner Gonzalez's proposal of $100,000 and Commissioner Vanderwerf's proposal of $10,000 additional for another project, then we could take this, the 355 that's remaining, so then you'd have 245, and then you would take $1 million less the 245 out of reserves and not deplete the reserves as far.
Right. And then if we have any situations with a facility that needed an emergency repair or something, we would have a little bit more in there to take care of that, or even a road too. We could still take it out of that for a road project too.
Commissioner Bremer.
Historically, what is kind of the comfortable reserve amount,
That's where
either
we
as a
had,
percentage or a number?
yeah, we had just started this reserve, this emergency reserve. This is for the board's use, the emergency reserve. We do have $14 million in a fund balance reserve that's required. This is above that we can easily appropriate in any kind of an emergency. We just started building this. We were trying to build it. We had it up to, what was it the prior year? 1.8 million. Then because of the Tabor and then also the parking garage, we depleted it. And so that's where we're at, this $546,000 right now. And our recommended level is to get it back up to 5 million.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate this discussion about reserves. So I have a question, because we do have, more than one bucket of reserves. Some of them are statutorily required, and others, like this one, is, what we feel is comfortable. But one of the concerns that I've always had with reserves is if we have another large event like a fire. Remember, we had some challenges in the Waldo Canyon fire about having sufficient reserves to fund overtime in a really short window so that we could fully deploy all resources immediately. So my question is, heaven forbid we should have another experience like that, what reserve would that overtime money come from? Can that come from the 14 million that you just mentioned, or do we need to actually have an additional reserve for that?
It should come from this reserve.
It should come from this or from the 14 million? So it would come from here?
No, from this board reserve, this emergency reserve here.
But the question isn't should it come from it, it's could it come from other sources of reserve?
It could come from the other one, yes.
Okay, so what I want to make sure is that we've got the ability to handle that overtime to get the things going immediately. So thank you. I appreciate Commissioner Waller's clarification. It's really, do we have the capacity with some other reserve to handle that problem? Because if we do, that's really helpful. I don't want us to be left in a place where we're having to ask the state for money, like I think is what happened last time, and that took a few extra hours. So.
Yeah, and how I came up to this $5 million is we had the 2 fires and 2 floods within that 3-year period, and the out-of-pocket expense to El Paso County was about $5.3 million. So, that was very unusual. We had all of those events happen in that very short time frame, and that was our out-of-pocket. So if we build it up to this $5 million, then that's a very good comfort level there.
So your normal expectation is this fund, but again, to Commissioner Waller's point, it could come from other reserves if we needed to. Is that correct?
It could, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, especially right now because this emergency reserve is low right now. If we had some kind of an emergency like that, yes, we could take it from the other reserves, and we just have to budget to have those reserves back up to the proper level within the 5-year period.
Okay, and that would be a statutory requirement or whatever, for example, like the other reserve of 14 million. Would that also apply, again, hopefully we don't have a non-emergency challenge, like the work we've got to do in our parking garage. But does the same kind of consideration apply there as well? Could be pulled from the other reserves just because of the statute. That would mean in next year's budget we would have to fully resupply that.
Mm-hmm.
And Commissioner, to clarify a little bit for you, my understanding is this reserve, the emergency reserve that we're talking about, is fully at your discretion, and there's no requirement to rebuild it unless that's the will of the board. The other reserves that Ms. Cassidy was speaking to, by policy and best practice and other things, as she mentioned, you are required to budget to replenish that within 5 years. And so there's no requirement to immediately replenish it within like the next budget cycle. But if we took out $2 million from that $14 million reserve, the 5-year forecast must show that being rebuilt.
Thank you. That's great.
Commissioner Williams.
Okay, so I have a different proposal here, and I've done the math slowly on my phone. So if we started off and we did $250,000 to roads in the high impact line, and then $10,000 for the grant for the census, because that's very important to us when it comes to our Pikes Peak RTA funding, to make sure that we have an accurate count. And then that leaves $96,389 to go into the reserve. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'll tell you, as I've been sitting here processing it and thinking about it, I don't know if you were asking me, but I'm answering, so.
I am asking you,
Sure.
Mr. Waller.
I'm inclined to kind of support Commissioner Vanderwerf's original proposal. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of money here in a $400 million budget. I think any extra dollars we can get to transportation is probably where we need to go with this, and I think if we don't put $96,000 into a reserve fund, that's probably not going to, impact us greatly, especially given that we have 14 million in reserves in other areas. So my recommendation would be to, again, do what Commissioner Vanderwerf originally proposed, which is to give 10 grand to the census grant, though I think the federal government should be paying for that. I'm happy to do it and put the remainder towards transportation. That's just how I see it.
I'm fine with that as well. I was just coming up with a number that divided by 5 districts.
Thank you.
Yeah, that works for me. So I would
Okay, so I've
second
got,
that
so
proposal.
we'll put that one in. And then on the 250,000, is everybody in agreement on, or three of you?
I think that was 345 is the number now, based on Commissioner Waller.
Oh, if we do all the rest of it?
Yeah, all the rest of it.
345,000?
Yes.
Yep.
Everybody good? Okay, so that leaves $389. We good?
And take staff out for pizza.
Okay.
Hold on,
Well, and
let me put that in this spreadsheet.
With,
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did want to clarify a couple of things. So one of the things, there are some possibilities that there are going to be some other incoming dollars that will allow us to replenish that much quicker than anticipated at this time.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, and so we're hopeful, but expecting that. So I'm very looking forward to seeing that actually replenished with largely within this year that's coming forward, if not in just the next several months. The other thing is I did want to just again mention for public consumption that one of the issues on this tight budget this year was that 27th paycheck that a lot of people, it was kind of touched on, but that extra paycheck, which happens only every, I'm told, 12 or 13 years, required a 27th paycheck, and that 27th paycheck was approximately $3.9 million. So over 40% of the anticipated increase in budget next year was going to that one extra paycheck. And so we were very limited in our budget flexibility this year, but I think we have attempted and done through the recommendations of all the staff a very good job in doing the proper job for the county residents and doing what we think is appropriate. And I think we've done a very good budget. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to make a couple of comments that way too. Yeah, I think if there's anything that this budget has demonstrated for us, it's proof that governing's hard. Sometimes it's a difficult and challenging process to engage in, especially when it comes to the budgetary process. We've had several factors that have created stressors on our budget in this time of booming economic growth. We had several unfunded mandates coming down from the state government this year. In fact, I think if we counted it up, we could look at between funded and unfunded around $10 million of new mandates from the state government. And so when you factor in that even they gave us some money to pay for some of those mandates, it ended up putting us over the Tabor limit. And, you know, for numerous reasons, we decided as a board this year that we were going to give those dollars back to the taxpayers. And so, you know, it created some more shortfalls this year. We had the 27th paycheck issue that popped up, certainly that added stress to this budget process as well. You know, we have a continuing and ongoing need for transportation in unincorporated areas of El Paso County, and we continue to fall short in those. You know, we've had to add caseworkers in the Department of Human Services because we've had a significant increase in population, an increase in growth, and the need for those kinds of services. I mean, we have infrastructure throughout the county that continually needs maintenance and repair, and infrastructure that, you know, for numerous reasons was, I don't want to say it was ignored, but infrastructure that had deferred maintenance over several years because of the economic downturns that we had gone through in previous years. And so, you know, I understand there isn't a department or agency out there that feels like they got all they need in order to accomplish the mission. But they certainly got everything we had to give them. And I feel confident about every single one of those agencies' abilities to continue and move forward with the allocation they got, as inadequate as it was. So I got to tell you, I'm incredibly proud of our team. I'm incredibly proud of the 2,850 employees that we get to represent in this county. And I know that they're the kind of people that are going to be able to move forward, regardless of what department or agency they're a part of. They're the kind of folks that are going to be able to move forward and provide the absolute best services they can for the citizens of El Paso County, even given these tight budget constraints that were put on them. So thank you for all of the hard work, contemplative effort you put into making this budget right. Thanks to all of the non-board elected officials that put a tremendous amount of effort into making sure that not only their agencies were taken care of, but their agencies were taken care of while considering funding for the other agencies as well. And most of all, thanks again to the 2,850 employees that we have that do more with less every single day and make this the greatest place in the world to live. All right, anything else? I think you got 3 head nods.
Yes, so we'll go forward with this budget as it's set here. We'll come back again on December 10th with all of the final resolutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need no motions today. Non-action item.